Look at me about to talk and jump on. And I wasn't even on the stage. Hey, y'all, how are you? I said I was going to be back tonight and I meant it. So now I am back. My day is over. It has been a very long day, but I am back to get done and to also update my live from earlier. Okay, that's one thing that I did want to do because I realized after the fact that I mentioned a lot. Well, I left a couple of things out, and it wasn't intentional. Um, I was just, oops, sorry, hold on. All right, here we go. Me leaving that out was not intentional at all. I just wanted to kind of like get through the lesson and give you the appropriate like books and information. But then I was reviewing it, and the books that I mentioned to you guys, they are important for character arc, but I actually left out accidentally the two main books I wanted to talk to you guys about. All right, so that was one. That was number one. Number two, I wanted to come back on because I said we'd be writing again. And number three, I wanted to give you guys some better writing prompts to do so. Because I tried to do the writing prompts earlier. We only had about 10 minutes or so. And then I said, these writing prompts don't even really encapsulate everything that I think you guys should be working on at this point in time. Well, I mean, that's just my opinion. Again, I'm not a guru. So I wanted to just come back on and present those things to you guys and just have like a little writing session. I'm going to be talking a lot less on this session. I'm sure that many of you are excited about that because it's just nice to kind of get some writing in. Let me share with you first and foremost the two books that I wanted to add into you guys, or add in, but I wanted to tell you guys about. Okay, brain is like not braining right now. Adding the two books that I want to tell you guys about with regard to character arc. All right, so you guys should be seeing my screen. Perfect. Okay. So KM Whelan actually has two amazing books on character arcs. So her first book is called Creating Character Arcs, and it should, if you're looking at the screen, it's right there in front of you. If you're listening, either like because you're cooking or something like that, you can just check my description for the links to those books. But it's called Creating Character Arcs, the Masterful Author's Guide to Uniting Story Structure, helping from the Helping Writers Become Authors series, right? So this is a really great guide to creating really wonderful, powerful character arcs, and it's one that I wanted to recommend to you. I actually already have this on Kindle version. I'm definitely going to get this in paperback. And another book of hers that I'm also trying to get in paperback, which is also amazing, is an extension of her character arc perspective. And it's called Writing Archetypal or Archetypal. I actually have never learned how to pronounce that particular word. I always call it archetypal. So hopefully I'm saying it right. Writing Archetypal Character Arcs, The Hero's Journey and Beyond. Again, from the Helping Writers Become Authors series. I'm actually going to stock up on all 11 of these books in paperback because I think her books are really great. And also, I love paperback in addition to Kindle. So I usually tend to try to buy both from authors that I really, really like and whose work I really enjoy. So this particular book builds off of the hero's journey, right? Which that in and of itself is not KM Whelan's invention, right? She did not invent the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, I think that's his name, is the one who really started in his like writings and lit and stuff like that. He's really the one that kind of started or like laid the foundation for the character's journey, for the hero's journey, excuse me. And he talks about the difference. He kind of talks about it in the sense of mythology and stuff like that, right? And that's really the extent that I know about his version of the hero's journey. I've never actually read his actual works. I've only read people who have read his works and written about his works. Now, this is not to say that the hero's journey is the only way to develop a character arc, but it's an interesting perspective on developing the character arc. And KM Whelan takes this work kind of a step further and gives her own, twist on the hero's journey. So I think having those two books in your possession, the Writing Archetypal Character Arcs book, and also the Creating Character Arcs book, I think would be really, really helpful for you guys. And of course, the links are below. And just FYI, you guys already know this, but those are affiliate links. You don't get charged extra, like you pay the actual price of the book that's listed. It's just I get a kickback if you go through my link. Okay, so drop a few pennies in your girl's piggy bank if you so choose, but it's not required. But these are two books that I did add to the professional book of the day. All right. Okay, y'all. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to share this tab. I just want to remind you guys once again, you know what? Let me present because this is looking very raggedy. Hmm. Sorry if you hear that weird noise in the background. I think it's my neighbors being weird. Okay, so anyway, so for this session, obviously the tech is not going to work the way I want it to work. Give me a second while it reloads. Okay, perfect. Sorry, y'all. Even my computer is tired. It's like, sis, you've been working me. Okay. Um, So I just want to remind you, as per usual, anytime I go live, Colby's Cozy Cafe is open. I'm actually going to change my background because I think I've had this on for like 2 days straight, this cute background behind me. But don't forget the giveaways, the free book grabs, and then the books of the day, which I still did not add KM Whelan's books to these on this slide, but they are available in the description. All right. Okay. Now, let's go back and let's actually get some writing done because that's what I really want this to be about is getting some writing done. And as promised, I did take some time today after work to reorganize the writing prompts that I had up earlier so that they reflected the lesson that I gave earlier, right? So if you were on here like in the morning time, I basically said that. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me actually put this on Do Not Disturb because I don't want any calls coming through. Okay, perfect. I basically said that there were 6 steps in general that you could take to create a character arc, a really good, strong character arc, right? So step one, just to review, you're going to review the character's critical history, traits 1 through 7. So the traumatic event or canonical event, the wounds, the fear, the new narrative, right? The flaw, et cetera, right? There are 7 primary traits that we talked about a couple of days ago. You're going to review those particular traits and you should actually jot them down, kind of like put them in a table with the original traits on the left. And then you can do step 2, which is you're going to create 7 traits that are the exact opposite of those 7 critical history traits. And I gave you guys an example of Joel from The Last of Us and how he had his list of dysfunctional critical history traits, right? And then we went through about half of the list, and I gave you examples of what the exact opposite trait would be when paired up with the original trait. So if you're afraid of being vulnerable and that is your fear in the beginning of the story, in the end of the story, the characters should not be afraid to be vulnerable and should welcome vulnerability, so on and so forth. That's step 2. Step 3, then you're going to list the macro, meso, and micro social triggers that your character will encounter in their journey. Again, the macro is on a more institutional level, according to like uh, a civilization, like attacking or like going extinct or whatever, a government institutions, changing rules and laws, an alien force, from outer space attacking Earth. Like those are macro level events and triggers that your character really can't control, but are that going to force your character to make a decision? The meso triggers are, once again, things that happen between groups in the story, kind of like the houses in Game of Thrones. When one house does something, another house responds, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then you have microsocial triggers, which are about the individual relationships, the individual choices, actions, and reactions to other individuals, right? Um, So you're going to make a whole list of macro, meso, and micro social triggers that your character will encounter in their journey. In Joel's case, the bigger macro issues that the world has gone to hell, a lot of the cordyceps monsters are running loose, and it's a constant, bid and struggle for survival. Then you have the meso groups. You have the fireflies versus the new governments that's kind of oppressive. You have then, David's little group when you get to that point in the series. Okay. So there's all these competing smaller groups that are forcing each other into different situations. And then you have the individual characters' choices and decisions that are affecting their relationships with each other and the larger story. Make a list of all those triggers that your character is going to encounter. Then step 4, you're going to identify where each of the triggers we just did in step 3, identify where each trigger challenges or reaffirms your character's critical history. What that means is that if, for example, right, let's say in Joel's situation, Ellie starts to show, let's say she starts to show signs of attachment to Joel, right? And let's say that, she wants to like spend quality time with Joel on this journey. I'm just kind of making this up. This kind of happens, sort of, but like, I'm just kind of making up the situation. And like she wants to do something like, I don't know, go fishing or whatever the case is. That's a microsocial trigger, right? That's her craving connection with an adult father figure. Joel has a series of options there, okay? But he can choose, or that trigger is going to force him to reaffirm his critical history where he stays in his fearful space of not being vulnerable, right? Or it's going to challenge him to get over his fear, or at least to attempt to get over his fear, right? He sees Ellie trying to get emotionally closer. It's going to either reaffirm the fact that he should be afraid, or it's going to challenge the fact that he should be afraid and give the impression to him that he can feel more comfortable around her, right? So when you're listing out those macro, meso, and microsocial triggers, you want to make sure that you are trying to decide, is this particular trigger going to challenge the critical history, or is it an opportunity for me to reaffirm the critical history? Let's say Ellie does something that ends up, making Joel mistrust her, or Ellie like betrays Joel for whatever reason, right? That would be a trigger that reaffirms Joel's critical history, right? Where he's like, maybe I might have wanted to be less fearful of being vulnerable, but you just acted a fool and you betrayed me. So now I'm going to go back into my shell and just strengthen my shell. It's just reaffirming my narrative, right? So you have to do that for each trigger and sort of decide if it's going to challenge or reaffirm that history. Step 5, organize these social triggers in some kind of logical or chronological order. Okay. And I mentioned earlier that basically the order that you put these triggers is can be chronological, but oftentimes, again, just like life, there are a lot of things that sometimes happen all at once, and not everything has a direct cause and effect relationship. It can be a direct cause and effect relationship where event A happens and so event B happens, but there can also be a variety of other things going on that collectively influence the zeitgeist, around a character, and that will force the character or influence the character to make a certain choice. And I'm not trying to suggest that you have to be time bound, but I do suggest that organizing these triggers in some kind of chronological order or some kind of logical order is a great place to start. Okay. It's just a starting place. It's not something that you necessarily have to stick to. These writing prompts and these lessons are meant to help make you feel more free, if that makes sense. They're not meant to box you in. They're just here to give you options. But you should find some kind of way to organize your social triggers. Um, in my story, the books of Ezekiel, for example, the first major trigger at the like that sets everything in motion is there is a terrorist attack, a bombing at on the border, rather right inside of the border of what is one of the last three protected civilian domains, civilian territories, right? So that signals to everyone, the civic order, which is the government, all the social and community groups, which include the civilians themselves, the cops, politicians, and everybody else in between. And it signals to our main character and main characters that the status quo has officially changed. And so now what all the characters and macro and meso groups are doing is now sort of has been determined by the setting off of this explosion, right? But it doesn't mean that everything is necessarily in like an A, then B, then C order. There are a lot of things that are happening all at once, right? So just kind of figure out and map out. Actually, a map is good, and we should actually talk about choice mapping in a future session. So I'm making a note to myself, but map out what type of order and what relationship these triggers have to each other. All right. Definitely going to do a whole class on mapping. I think that could be really cool. And then the last step, you're going to decide what decision or choice your main character makes when a social trigger agitates one of his dysfunctional traits, right? So my suggestion here is that each trait, right, those original 7 traits, should be agitated about 3 times with the following outcomes. Number 1, the first time a certain trait is agitated, the character should decide not to face their critical history trait or that critical history trait. The second time a trigger agitates a trait, that same trait, the character should be forced to face their trait, but they should fail at fixing it, right? And then the third time that character is faced with a decision or when a social trigger agitates that very trait, they should choose to face that trait and then win. It does not have to be this exact formula. It's just that this is very helpful for you deciding at which points in the story the character starts to make certain shifts from their dysfunctional traits to their functional trait. And I'm going to once again use an example from The Last of Us, and then we'll start writing. Okay. So, number 1, when after Joel's daughter is killed, we fast forward to 10 years later. He's ice cold, and the world sucks, and he hates everybody, or he's at least apathetic, right? That's the context. That's the setup. Okay. He gets saddled with having to bring Ellie across the United States, and he doesn't really know who or what she is at this point in time, right? He does agree to do this for her, but it's at first him and his partner, right? His partner in crime. I forget her name, but she's great. She's played by Anna Torv in the video game. No, not Anna Torv. She's played by Anna Torv in the series itself. And then I forget who actually voices her in the video game. But anyway, great representations. Tess. So Joel and Tess, who's his partner in crime, decide to take Ellie and transport her because like they need money or resources or whatever. Like they're kind of mercenary smugglers, right? I'm going to try to say this without spoiling things. There's a point in time where Joel has to make this journey alone, and he is asked to basically take charge of Ellie, right? And there are actually several moments from that point on to, somewhere in about like maybe 30% of the way, there are several points wherein Ellie is trying to connect with Joel. Like Ellie comes up to bat, like, and she's a great kid. Like, totally a kid that you want to like be able to say, hey, this is my kid. I raised this kid because she's a great kid. We love Ellie, right? And she makes so many attempts, having lost everything, including her parents, right? To connect with Joel. And he's just like, nope, not connecting with you. Nope, 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 nope. He's mean, he's rude, he's gruff. There's a point at which, like, she actually ends up saving his life and he can barely even say thank you. Like, he was just like mad attitude. So we actually have several moments where the individual microsocial trigger, which is her trying to connect with him, is being like fluffed off every single time. Okay. Then there is a point in the story, right, where he's trying to actually like not be such an a-hole. Like you can see that he's maybe trying to turn the corner, but he's still afraid of being vulnerable. He's afraid of caring about someone. And that happens in a couple of instances, actually. That happens maybe over 2 or 3 instances that, from my memory. So he's trying to face his critical history trait, but he's failing at fixing it because he just hasn't made that full transition yet. And then finally, um, he makes a very clear decision that I'm going to put everything on the line for this person that I love and care about, right? And I mean, literally against all odds, like something he would have never done at the beginning of the story, something that he could never even imagine himself doing ever after the loss of his daughter. He puts it all on the line for Ellie. And I feel like this is why, like this sort of progression over the course of the story, this is why The Last of Us hits us so hard in a good way. Like it's a gut punch in a good way, right? And the character, it's really honestly some of the best character development I've ever seen in any video game, but just kind of like overall, you know what I'm saying? Obviously aside from Breaking Bad, which is also a masterclass in character development, all right. And they kind of follow this interesting formula. It's like a push and pull because, you know, things that you expect people to do, they don't do. And things that you don't expect them to do, they do. And they surprise you and then they also reassure you. Then they make you unsure. Then they surprise you again. But we're doing basic character arcs now. We'll get to the more complicated ones later down the line. But this is a good setup, in my opinion, to really help set you up to create a great character arc, so that you feel like your character is not only winning against the external forces at the end, but they also have won against themselves. Okay. So I'm done talking. I hope that that was a helpful clarification of what we did earlier. What we're going to do now, or at least what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put some music on and we are going to write probably until like around 8:40 or so. But I'm here if you have any questions or you just want to say hey and show up in the chat. I am down. But in the meantime, happy writing. All right, team, it is getting late. I hope you guys had a pretty decent writing session. It was about 40 minutes long. I hope that this writing prompt on character arc really is helping you out. And if it's not, I hope that you find something in the books of the day in the description that will help you out. I'm going to sign off. It's been a long day. FYI, I might take the day off tomorrow, or at least maybe one of these days during the weekend. I think I just need to like sleep and decompress, and I have a lot of reflection to do with regard to the past week's events. And I do have some exciting things coming up that I think are going to be very impactful, or at least I hope they will. But I think I need to take just a minute to digest. So if you guys don't see me on tomorrow or Saturday, like don't get alarmed. But I will definitely communicate to you guys in some way, shape, or form that is happening. And either way, like just keep writing every day anyway. All right. Have a lovely night, and I'll see you guys very soon. All right. Bye.